What's up, my man?
Oh, man, that was... tell you what, it's always nerve-wracking to have on a guest you've never spoken to in your entire life. But Ken Hammond rocked it, I thought.
Yeah, dude, he was solid. I mean, as a fan and an athlete in triathlon, I really found that enjoyable. I mean, he gave me a lot of inside scoopage, man, that was just really interesting.
Yeah, he not only is he easy to talk to, but just how he got into the sport and started race directing and was there being at the original Ironman Louisville. Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, this incredible, and I can definitely see why people love going to this race and supporting it and continuing to come out. And I think hopefully after listening to this podcast, they'll not only have be more excited and have more answers and less anxiety about doing the race, but I truly hope they have a much larger appreciation for what race directors and the people that put on these events go through in order to make sure that we have a safe race as possible.
Oh yeah, that and like just inside stuff about how and why a swim course can get changed, how they take care of the bike course the night before. What else was there?
That part alone was mind-blowing.
Yeah, that was pretty cool, man, I gotta say.
It was mind-blowing, and then, I mean, it's from an athlete's perspective, since I'm racing it, it was just like, I mean, that everything's going to be taken care of, and then it's also nice to understand the whys behind things, and especially having the actual race director walk you through from the rolling start and the athlete meeting all the way through when you cross the finish line inside Sylvia Stadium, is really invaluable. And so hopefully that a lot of athletes enjoy this, and we do our best to have, when we do have guests on the Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast, we try to make sure they're not entertainment is important, but information is more valuable.
Yep.
And so and this one, and Ken delivered tenfold. This was 10 times better of a podcast and guest interview than I had hoped. So kudos to him again. And again, if you're there, shake his hand, give him a hug, high five. And we hope you enjoy the Ohio 7.3 race course preview by the race director himself, Ken Hammond.
Ken?
Yeah.
Hey, man.
Hey.
What's happening, buddy?
How are you?
Good. This is Mike here.
Yeah, and I'm Robbie. I'm the one that's been emailing with you back and forth. Appreciate you taking the time. I know this is a super busy week, next 2 weeks for you too.
Yeah. This is where it really starts ramping up and getting kind of crazy.
Yeah, so I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with us for a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
How you doing over there?
Good.
Yeah?
All things are good, yeah.
Are you in Delaware?
I am not. I am actually in Syracuse.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is that where you're from?
Yeah. Born and raised right here in Central New York.
Oh, wow.
Are you an Orange fan?
How can you not be living in Syracuse?
Oh, is he an Orange fan?
Well, I know.
They would have banned him from the city if he wasn't.
Oh, yeah. We're season ticket holders for the basketball team because football is, you might as well go watch a high school team.
Yeah, all right. Well, now we got our connection because I've always wanted to go to that dome and check out a game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's you got to come out for a good a Duke or a North Carolina at this point because filling the dome at 30,000 for a basketball game is pretty awesome.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Go ahead and tell him because I know it's going to come up. Mike is a diehard Wisconsin basketball fan.
I'm a huge college basketball fan, man.
Yeah, same here.
Back into the. I'm trying to think. Who was on that Syracuse team when the Keith Smart shot? Remember those days? That's probably way back for you, man.
Yeah, that was pretty early for me.
How did I guess we're kind of just starting. I mean, if you're cool with that, I mean,
of course.
Yeah, we're going to do some kind of intro, but I think it's kind of gone smooth here. We're kind of just like get a little background on how you got into race directing, because that's always fascinating to me. And I mean, I assume at some point you were or are a triathlete and just sort of fell in love with the game.
Yeah, it's actually I will credit a little bit of SU basketball here in my story, but how it started was I was in college. I was going to Cortland State, just south of Syracuse. Was doing a sports management degree, and part of the degree was you had to do an internship. And I had just started triathlon, so Ironman was, the pinnacle of the sport, and just thought it'd be the best thing in the world to work for Ironman. So I moved down to Tampa and worked out of their Clearwater office at that time, back in 2007, and interned down there for 8 months, and then moved back home, and kind of just, wasn't offered the job at the time. They were just starting to race direct themselves. I mean, I worked the very first Louisville that ever happened.
Oh man.
Yeah. So if you actually go back to that first Louisville, and who was it? Craig McDonald. Who was the winner for the males race. If you look and you see the confetti falling behind him off of 5th Street Live, that was me. I was the confetti cannon.
Oh man. Confetti Cannon Ken.
Yeah, that was
our.
me.
That's
that
it.
was me.
Confetti Cannon Ken.
Yeah. So that was my internship. I moved home and I worked at a Fleet Feet here in Syracuse for 3 years as assistant marketing manager. And then Ironman Syracuse came to town, which at that time was Bill Burke and PEM and WTC was just kind of taking over the race from Bill mid-season, and they were looking for someone local. And working at Fleet Feet in the marketing department, I had worked with Bill, got to know him from just becoming a sponsor of the race. Fleet Feet here in Syracuse was the run course sponsor. So funny enough, our visitors bureau took Bill, myself, my manager, out to an SU basketball game, and we sat about 10 rows up mid-court, first level, and Bill and I just sat there. And I mean, first of all, for Bill being a Louisiana guy, he's used to LSU football, but he's not used to 20,000 on a Tuesday night.
Yeah,
for a basketball game. So he was pretty starstruck with that, and we sat there and talked triathlon. Just completely tri-geeked out. And 3 months later, Bill called and offered me the job, and I took over. Basically my first day race directing was race day Syracuse 70.3 2010.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thrown in the fire.
Yeah, just learn right on the go.
Were you just spinning around looking for things to do? Like, what am I doing?
I had no idea what the hell happened. And kind of learned and got my feet wet going that way, and I race directed Syracuse for the past 8 years, and when they came up with the concept to put a race on in Ohio, I was pretty much the first in line to take that on, and that's how I got into the race directing gig, and I'm very fortunate to have the Delaware, Ohio race. It has been an amazing experience. It's an amazing city, amazing people. So I'm really happy to be race directing that one.
That's awesome. And is this its third year?
This is its third year. Yep.
Third year too. I got to agree with you. When I first saw it pop up, I was thinking, man, like Delaware, Ohio. Like, of course, anytime I hear Delaware, I think of like Wayne's World, and they're like, "Hi, I'm in Delaware." I'm like, where is this place? And of course, my wife is unfortunately an Ohio State Buckeye. Yeah, nobody's perfect. But she was like, "Oh, I know exactly where that is. It's like 30, 40 minutes outside Columbus." And so ever since it was announced, it's been on our radar. And I usually do Muncie, and we have a lot of athletes there. But I had some other friends that did it, and they had nothing but good things to say about it.
Well, and that's a great piece, because I was in the same boat. I mean, just not knowing the geography of Ohio at all. And I was like, where the hell's Delaware? Exactly. And sure enough, every time I still type it into Google when I'm looking at maps, it tries to send me to the state Delaware.
Exactly. Yep.
but yeah, it's perfect location because you can fly right into Columbus. It's like you said, 30 minutes outside of the city. So in our race description, it's that urban feel because you still have that city feel. You still have that downtown Delaware.
Yep.
But I mean, you bite the course, and I mean, within the first 5 miles, you're out in the cornfields. It's awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. The old cornfield. Now, is that Ohio Wesleyan? Is that right?
It is. Yep.
And this, I was kind of looking at some of the stuff too. And this, is it Selby Field? That looks like a classic gem, man.
Yeah, Selby is. I forget the statistics. It's like one of the oldest football stadiums in the country. And it's great because our expo is right in the parking lot for the stadium, so you're right in the shadows of that for expo and check-in, and then transition and finish lines out on the field.
That's awesome.
As soon as I was told that we were able to be out on the field for transition and the finish line was going to be somewhere in that area, my immediate thought is, again, growing up Central New York, Lake Placid is the pinnacle of Ironman for me. So that half loop on the oval is just iconic, especially if you go out for that midnight finish. So I was like, we got a track, let's do the half loop on the track, and we finished right in front of the visitors bleachers. So we fill those in the peak of the day when you got all those finishers coming in. That visitor side of the bleachers just gets packed, and you can hear it. It's awesome.
The bleachers aspect is so underrated in terms of, because and of course we've all three been at a finish line before. It's so hard to get like a good view, and you have to like stress out about it. But I would imagine like having like everything funneled and having like the stadium style seating that is bleachers like gives families and spouses and spectators and whatever such a really unique view to just like camp out and know that they're not going to miss seeing their loved one or friend or whatever across the finish line.
Yeah, it's not like most of our finish lines. I mean, in a busy part of the day, you can be 6, 8, 10 people deep just standing there, and it's like you said, trying to see over everybody else. Yeah, that bleachers aspect, you fill it up. You can just bring your cooler, bring whatever you have to eat and drink, camp out for the day, like you said. And you can see them as soon as they enter, because you can see across the field, obviously. So you can see them as soon as they enter. You can see that whole last 200 meters of the run and all the way through that finish line.
That is great. I usually go up, I'm not racing. I'll be up there to support everybody this time. And when I do not race, I make a tribute video for the race itself and just kind of highlight the action and stuff like that. And I was going to ask you, since we're having a podcast with you now, if maybe I had a better shot of getting an angle on that finish line, but it sounds like I might not need it.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, just send me a note and we can get you something for a good good location setup. But yeah, I mean, within those bleachers, it's hard to miss, because you can even walk up. I mean, it's just a hair outside of an arm's reach from the finish line or of the finishers, but you can get right up next to that. With the bleachers right next to it.
Oh, perfect.
That's awesome. And let me ask you this before we kind of get into like kind of the nuts and bolts of the race and swim, bike, run stuff. Yeah. When you first took on this race, and you being a triathlete, how most of them are and how they think. What was your thoughts on? All right, 2 transitions. How is this going to go?
Thankfully, with the Ironman deal, I've witnessed a few of them. Raleigh being kind of the one we modeled a lot after. Thankfully, we don't have 56 miles between the 2 transitions. We only have 7. But I'd worked Raleigh several times, and I can't remember. There was another split transition one that I had known about that we got to model it after. At first, it's daunting, and I know for a lot of athletes, it's a scary thing. But if you just follow the crowd, you follow the kind of the instructions we're giving you throughout the weekend, it's really not. It's a pretty seamless flow.
Yeah, because they're only 5 to 6 miles from Selby to the swim start.
I think it's 7 if you drive.
Okay, all right, 7 if you drive. Got it. Looking over it, and I've never done the split transition thing, but I'll be racing and looking at it. As much as I hate checking in stuff the day before, I love it on race morning. And so if I'm correct, obviously you have an opportunity to drop off run gear day before as well.
Yeah.
And so to me, like, and I guess your bike gear bag before the day before, is that correct? Since it's two separate transitions.
Yeah. So to kind of start with that, with the weekend. So after you get checked in, again at Selby, you'll have all your bags. You'll have 3 plastic bags in your goodie bags.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have morning clothes bag, your run gear bag, and your bike gear bag. And yeah, so we actually do what we call mandatory check-in for bikes and run gear. So for bike check-in, all you have to have is your bike.
Yeah.
You guys know you have access to that, so you can put water bottles in, you can inflate your tires, you can do any last-minute adjustments if you want. Sunday morning, but as long as your bike's in Sunday. If you want to drop off your bag, you can, but not necessary.
Don't have to. Got it.
Yeah. And then for the run gear, this is what always kind of gets people. We do have a quote-unquote mandatory run gear check-in, but you also have access to that race morning as well, because a lot of people really worry about, if they put like a fuel belt or some type of liquids, that it's going to sit out all day and just kind of bake inside that plastic bag. So,
gotcha.
So you do have access to that. What I always tell people, and I remember seeing this, going back to like Florida, full Ironman. Pros used to just drop off an empty bag. Maybe their sneakers in it, and that'd be it, because they would know that they could bring their helmet or their sunglasses or the hat and their fluid all race morning.
Got it.
At the same time, though, Sunday morning at Selby, now you're 7 miles away. Shuttles are at least a mile in either direction. We got 2 shuttle pickups, so that's a mile from where transition is as well. You're just adding a little bit more stress, but you are able to get to your T2 bags race morning.
Got it.
Yeah, and T2 bags is we'll do that 4:30 to 6:30 because we want to make sure you don't miss your bus or car up to the start.
Right, I gotcha. So really, for the athlete, it's like whatever you feel comfortable with, not adding any more undue stress on race morning.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. I would, and I'll probably drop one off. But like you said, even like with full Ironman events, you have access to all your bags the morning of. But I know for me and anybody listening that's doing the race doing this, I know that I don't put any hydration with my run stuff, but when I drop off my run gear stuff, I use gel flasks.
Yeah.
But I'll be putting those, and if you use gel flasks, I would definitely highly recommend. I put those in a Ziploc bag and then I put them inside my shoe.
Yeah.
That way they don't get knocked around or stepped on. But then also, the hotter it gets outside, the more likely your gel is to, or whatever is to leak outside of its snout. So I always put mine in a Ziploc bag just to make everything as clean and the least amount of mess as possible.
Yeah, because it'd be a mess to step into your shoe with that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it would.
Exactly.
No,
exactly.
I assume you go over that in detail at these athlete meetings, correct?
Correct.
And do you host those? I mean, are you the guy that does?
No, so our announcer will go through all the details, but I make sure that I'm available for all of them. So okay. You'll pretty much just see me sitting on the side of the stage. Just sitting there kind of waiting. Mostly it's for the questions afterwards.
Oh, okay, because I happened to read a few race reviews, and one of the things somebody mentioned was that the athlete briefing was very funny.
Yeah, Dave Kappas, our race announcer, is really good.
Yeah.
He's done it all. He'll be in his 3rd year. He's really good with it.
Okay,
that's awesome. So how is the town received this race?
They love it, and they love the event. It's a great piece. I wish that more cities embraced Ironman like the city of Delaware does. They have permanently painted on South Henry Street, which is the first and last mile of the run course. They have painted M dots along the entire road.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yep. The city painted
awesome.
They made a stencil and they painted M dots all the way down the road. What else do they do? They put up Ironman 70.3 Ohio banners on all the street post signs in town. There's 5 or 6 different kind of arteries that come into the city from outside, and every one of those main roads has a banner outside of it that says "Welcome Ironman athletes." Man. They really roll out the red carpet, and it's a great piece. And the one thing that I think that goes unnoticed most, that I always tell athletes and spectators to do, is, especially spectators, if you're sitting around, I mean, my wife comes out, and is bumming around town as I'm running around like a chick with my head cut off. Go downtown. There's a ton of restaurants that typically aren't open on Sundays, but they open just for our spectators. And that's, I mean, the restaurants and the stores in downtown Delaware are awesome. So if you have a chance to take a walk up and down the street, it's pretty cool.
Wow. Do you get a sense that that's just something that happens with particular towns, or do you have when you go in there, obviously you have to meet with the Chamber of Commerce or whoever you're dealing with in the cities. Yep. And do you feel like that's a big part of your job, is to create that relationship? And
yeah, it's definitely a big piece of it. It's towing that line between forming this relationship and forming a good working partnership with the city, and specifically with the city of Delaware. It's actually City Hall that pretty much took it on, which has been great. I mean, our first year, the city mayor was our volunteer director.
That's cool.
The city manager is a swimmer in a relay for all 3 years. So they just embrace it and they love it, and they see, and you can see, an event like this, you're talking, we're probably going to be close to the 2,500 athletes again. You're talking somewhere in the $2 to $3 million economic impact for a city.
Wow.
So, it's just a huge piece, and even for the county, just for the county itself, with hotel stays and restaurants and all that kind of stuff. It's great. It's just huge, and the city just thankfully embraced it. But the part that you're towing the line is making sure it's safe and good for your athletes, and not just for the city. Making sure that the athletes have a great experience, as well as making sure that the city's happy and making sure we're doing everything right with them.
Man, do you think it's, and yeah, I promise we'll eventually get into the actual race, but do you think it's easier to an extent to get these towns that are 40, 45 minutes outside of a bigger city? I always kind of think of Muncie and how incredibly popular it is, but to get these kind of fringe market cities that are outside, like a Columbus or an hour and a half, whatever, out of Indianapolis, like Muncie is, to really rally and see the benefit of having this event versus trying to go all in and getting right smack dab in the middle of a city. And then obviously I would imagine that's where more politics comes in. And it's like, do we really need it? Do we not need it? And that's kind of one of the things I've always been so impressed with Ironman, like Madison, Wisconsin, and Louisville too, is like how the cities like totally rally, and then other cities it's like, we don't really think this is worth our while.
It comes down to, it's just the city and kind of the culture that's been built there. And I think that's, as an athlete, I'd love finishing in downtown. I remember doing Poconos the very first year, and you finish, right in the center of Strasbourg, and it was awesome. And it's a great experience. The crowd loves it because it gives the spectator something to do. But that some of them are hugely popular and they're out in the middle of a field, nowhere near a city. And then some, like Madison, Wisconsin, it's, you're right downtown Madison, and it's amazing. And a lot of it comes from the leadership of cities too, I think. Because you look at some of the other races that aren't around anymore, that were for years, and it's just either a change in leadership, and that was like, it just takes one person essentially to be either in love with triathlon or hate triathlon that can really break it.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess sometimes you always forget that, and I know we as athletes, we look at races and think, oh well, it's the athletes, the race management's fault that they're not renewing or these are races around. But it takes a lot for these races to go on, and like you said, it just takes one new person, or a lot of times a newly elected person, to come in and think that never heard of it. Seems like too much work. Let's just not support it anymore.
Exactly. And I mean, you can see that in a number of cities across the board. And not just in the Ironman. I mean, just everywhere. With
anything.
Yeah.
It almost seems like not as simple as, but it really helps, like you said, if, the people in the city are all about it, like that are involved in this guy or the volunteer director and the people like that are, probably have a good impact, or they're connected in the city or whatever, and they're behind it. They kind of probably lead that way. I think David Buckner is a friend of ours. I've got to know, and like I'm always fascinated by the volunteer piece of it, and how, because that's just huge. Like if a lot of people get involved and they like it, and it's just going to be a word of mouth spread, I would imagine that alone probably drives a huge part of how a city, embraces it.
Yeah, and again, I think we got lucky with the city of Delaware, from the top down. So again, the city mayor was our volunteer director and super involved. Our city manager is a swimmer and a relay team. Our police chief, who does all the work, gets all the counties and all the different counties involved on the law enforcement side, is a cyclist. The representative we use for DOT is an athlete. And I think those helped. And then even, this is the part that always blows me away, is year one, we had 2 Columbus news stations live broadcasting from transition race morning.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, to see a news camera before 9 a.m. is unheard of for an Ironman race. So to have them out there at 5 a.m., live feed from transition was huge. And then because of that type of support, I was in Walmart, in the city of Dublin, which is 2 towns over from Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
And the cashier, who you would never just on the surface expect to know what Ironman was like, oh, hey, I saw that this weekend. And it just, having the widespread support and even people knowing what Ironman is outside of, the impacted area was huge.
That's awesome. It's making me more excited to race as we get into this. And I know if people are listening, they're like, yeah, cut the chit chat, get on with the swim, bike, run stuff. So we'll hop into the swim for everybody listening that's doing the race, and I know we'll have a ton of listens. The swim course, I'll read it off the site. Says the swim course is a triangular shaped swim that will start and finish on the shores of Delaware State Parks Beach. Athletes will swim in a clockwise motion with right hand turns. This is a reservoir, and water temperature changes throughout the year. This year will be a rolling start where athletes will self-seed based on your approximate time and appropriate swim times. And I hate to always compare this, but it looks like verbatim almost what the Muncie swim course is. It's in a reservoir, temperatures change, and it's clockwise in a rectangle. What are your big tips and got to knows about the swim in Ohio 70.3?
Well, so this year we've got the 2 big changes, which you just read. So the change 1, the clockwise swim.
Right.
We used to be counterclockwise, and it made sighting really hard because you were staring at the sun.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I read that, too.
Yeah, so this year, hopefully with the change of direction, I mean, it's a triangle, so at least one leg of it, you'll be staring at the sun. But, ideally, it'll really eliminate with that piece. And then the second piece is we're going to the rolling start versus the wave start. And I just had my first rolling start here at Syracuse 70.3. I've witnessed them at other places, but this is the first time race directing one. And it's a much easier flow because this way it takes out those people who are in the last wave who are good swimmers and have to swim over people, or the people who are slower swimmers who are going first, and they get run over. This way you're based on your swim time or what you expect your swim time is. And we'll have big signs that go every basically 5 minutes, and it'll start, I think, at 20 or 20, like under 25-minute swims. And then it'll go, 30 to 34 minutes and 35 to 39. And you kind of self-seed yourself all the way back to an hour and 10. And we get to fluctuate a little bit with 1 to 2 athletes every 3 seconds, and if we need to slow it down or speed it up, we can do that. But yeah, like you said, it's a reservoir swim. It's a flood controlled reservoir, and I've witnessed it. I mean, they can control the water. They won't for race day because they know we're coming. But if it's downstream, is going pretty dry, they can raise and lower the lake 10 feet in 24 hours.
Wow.
I mean, you're talking a pretty big lake, yeah. So the flow is definitely pretty well controlled, and that's the nice thing so it is pretty much kind of a moving body of water, even though it's a lake, just because of the dam. So but it's, again, that temperature, if they decide that they need to release some water race week, I mean, that can change temperature pretty, I don't want to say drastically, but it can change the temperature, one way or the other.
Would that make it cooler then if they...
I think it would, just because it's going to give you some more moving water. But we've been right around that, that wetsuit cutoff both years that we've done it. So I see us being pretty much right in that timeline, and this summer's been a little bit warmer, I think, than last. So as people always ask, they're like, tell me what the water temperature is. I want to know what to pack, and we'll tell you in the athlete briefings as well on Friday and Saturday what we've read for Friday and Saturday temperatures. But always pack your wetsuit. You never know.
Never know.
Because what happens if on Friday we just get rain all day and it's 60 degrees? I mean, it can drop the temperature too. So
yeah. Now, two questions. One, did you just strictly change the direction to clockwise based on athlete feedback? And then two, I did notice that one of the things in the past was Ohio. Your race had so many people. It looks like it was very hard to get people in the water. So there was lots of waves from the first wave to the last wave, and there was a huge. Looks like it would have had to have taken a lot of time. Is this new rolling start going to allow people to get everyone into the water earlier and on course? Yeah, so we did change the swim direction based purely on athlete feedback. We take athlete surveys every year, and we kind of take a percentage of satisfaction and everything for the race. I mean, kind of self-bragging here. Everything for the race was about 80% or higher. But swim course was like in the 50s and 60s. So it's like, we know we have to do something here. And one of the reasons why we never changed it in the second year last year was because, as you just said, there were so many swim waves that with the way transition flow is and the way it's all set up and the direction of the swim, you would have had to have multiple waves trying to cross where athletes are coming out of the water. Got it.
So now, with this rolling start, we can get everyone in the water in probably half an hour to 45 minutes. I'm trying to push for like the 40 to 45 minute range. But we can, again, speeding up, slowing it down, and depending on check-ins, you can do it in about 35 minutes. So at that point, everyone's going to be on one side on the side of the swim exit. If we have a little bit of crossover, you're only talking maybe 5 minutes at most, so it's going to be a pretty thin stream of athletes coming out of the water as it is. So that's been the big piece, and that's exactly it. We used to have 14 to 15 waves of athletes. I mean, at 5 minutes apart, it was almost an hour and a half of swim waves.
Yeah, that's what I saw. So you're cutting it in half.
Yeah, we're cutting it. Yeah, exactly, just right in half. So at most, it'll be 45 minutes.
Wow.
So you're sold. Awesome. You're sold on the rolling start now.
And and the idea of the safety, it takes out of the anxiety a lot of it too, and that's where the rolling start really it was part of that swim safety or swim smart initiative that Ironman had started with the rolling, and it really kind of started with the fulls instead of the big mass start. 2,500 people all clawing to try to get on the line. But it just takes out that anxiety. It's just a nice flow. You kind of it's a steady walk into the water compared to here's a gun, now go running. kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm about ready to give up on my fight for that.
Yeah, I think it is a losing battle, but I do gotta say, like, for events like this, when you're doing two things, and I hope athletes appreciate this, and I would imagine just from the reason, honestly, like, that you got, I don't want to say negative feedback about the swim, but less than the other ones, because the swim times look a lot longer than most races, so most athletes give feedback based on how they perform. So I would imagine a lot of their not liking the swim was that, oh, my time was 3 to 4 minutes slower than I usually said. But if you're listening, you're doing this race, you're thinking about this race, when you have a race and a race director that is now going to listen to feedback, change the swim direction, and then the rolling start. Basically, I would imagine the other part of the reason people were maybe unhappy with the swim was that they were in that last half of the waves where they're not getting the water until like 8:15 or 8:30, and so now you're like, oh well, now everybody can get in whenever they want to, versus the just a little bit of luck or not luck by going early. So I think obviously that sounds like two really good additions and changes to the course this year than versus the last 2 years.
Well, and the other piece that I think is helpful that with the kind of the rolling start is we do have the swim. We do a warm up within kind of like this like little roped off area, and we'll do the swim warm up probably 6:45 to 6:55, give or take. Again, we'll kind of make that an announcement based on swim personnel. But we kick everybody out of the water at about 6:55. That way, all our swim safety assets can get into place. So now instead of my swim warm-up's at 6:55 and my swim wave doesn't go until 8:15, what am I going to do for an hour and 20 minutes?
Right.
Now you can say, all right, maybe I've got a half an hour. At most, I've got 40 minutes, to kind of just sit here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you do, that's so awesome. So you do offer like a 10-minute window to actually get in the water and do a swim warm-up.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So, and then we can move A+. One thing before we get out of the water, you said so the race starts at 7?
Yep.
And then so you don't have pros at this race?
We do not.
Okay, so what do you think about? Do you think pros enhance the vibe around these races? I mean, I'm just a general question. I mean, it's no big deal really, but do you like having pros at your races, or is that a asset you think?
I think with what we're doing, where you're focusing the pro races is nice, because you were having a lot of pros that kind of C-level pros that were coming out and winning a bunch of money. So now focusing it and having better competition at fewer races is great. I was actually smiling a little bit as you're asking the question, because one of my favorite pieces of it all was people would always ask me like, oh, who won the race when there was pros? And I'm like, I have no idea. I could probably give you a bib number, but I don't know who it was. And for a long time, I did think that pros were a big, attraction for people. They're like, oh, I'm going to come out and race with the pros. But clearly, I mean, Delaware here, we're getting close to selling out at 2,500, and this is the third year without pros. So I think a course and overall race experience tends to outweigh the desire to be with the pros.
Yeah, Muncie's the same way. It's got 2,500 people every single year.
Yeah.
And they haven't had pros in, I think, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So we're getting out of the water. You finish your triangular shape swim. You're coming out. You're heading into T1, where it's your last visit to T1. You won't be coming back. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so there's a few things actually I forgot. Before you even get into the water, you have your morning clothes bags. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have anybody there, or you just want dry clothes, we'll have a little boxed out area kind of barricaded in with a box truck, big 26-foot box truck. If you have morning clothes, anything you want, sweatshirt, pants, sandals, anything like that, you can just drop it in the area. Our volunteers will pack it up and we'll drive that to Selby for you. You get out of the water, as you just said, it's a little bit of a run. It's probably about maybe 100 yards out of the water up to transition into the parking lot. And from there, it's, find your bike. The big thing there is everything that you want back from the swim, you have to make sure it goes in your blue bike gear bag. So you'll have, when you get to your bike, your helmet, your shoes, your gels, your sunglasses, whatever you need on the bike will be inside your bag. Mm-hmm. You're going to take all that out, put in your wetsuit, put in your goggles, put in your swim cap, that kind of stuff. Tighten your bag back up, leave that at your bike rack, put on your biking stuff, make sure your helmet's strapped on, and then run out to transition. So the big thing is, and this is the hard part, this is probably the hardest part with 2 transitions.
Yeah.
Somebody is going to miss their wetsuit putting it back in their bag. Mm-hmm. Someone's just going to leave it laying on the ground. Make sure, if you want that back and you want to guarantee that you're going to get that back, you put it in that blue bike gear bag. Because then we'll take that as soon as everyone's gone. We'll take all those gear bags that now have wetsuits and wet towels and goggles. We'll put that in a box truck, and we'll also transport that back down to Selby as well.
So
got it.
I would say, and then this is one thing I noticed somebody was talking about was that. So the other part of that is like bike pumps don't go in that bag, correct?
Correct.
So they have to have somebody to carry that or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we ask that you don't put it in your morning clothes bag, but again, someone is gonna. If you have somebody there with you that can do it, that's great. Otherwise, we do have mechanics that 90% of their race morning routine is just filling tires.
Yeah. Mike, that's why I'm bringing you, so you can make sure you take my pump after their.
Come on, man. He's got pumpers on. He's got on the ground.
Way, man. I like to pump my own. You got to
Geez.
pump your own. You got to
let go, man. Let it go.
I know.
Release it. Trust the world.
That T1 is one more vote for me for a non-wetsuit swim. Talk about making life easier.
Yeah,
it's not gonna jam your wetsuit and get it off, and I don't think it's gonna be wetsuit legal anyway. But yeah, one more vote for the non-wetsuit. So you get done, you're out on you hop on the bike, and now you're about to head on your 56-mile route. And from everything I've read, it is definitely a flatter and fast bike course. Looks like it starts out with a little bit of a false flat there, the first 18 to 26 miles, but then the rest is pretty good. But I do know that I don't know if this is a different course from last year, but I do know the course has been changed a little bit from its original route in 2016.
Oh yeah. 2016, our original route, hell, we probably had like 40 different turns. I think the longest stretch of road going straight was maybe 4 or 5 miles. Oh, wow. And then otherwise it was like a mile here and there, and then it was a turn.
Somebody described it as Pac-Man.
Like Wisconsin.
Very much. That's a great description.
Pac-Man.
That's what it was like. And then last year worked a lot, again, with our police chief in Delaware and Delaware County Sheriff's Department, and came up with this new route. And I think now we have maybe 10 turns at most. And it's great. I mean, your first, I think, like you said, I think it's almost the first 15 to 18 miles is just, there's one turn. The one change that we have this year is, it's both for car and athlete safety, is we're going to stay on route US 23 when you come out of the park.
Got it.
So in years past, again, for those who have done it in the past, you used to come out of the park, and even if you've done like Mingo Man, you come out of the park, you go maybe a half mile, and you get on what's called the test pavement, and that just kind of paralleled US 23. The road's not in the best of shapes. It's a seasonal road, so it's really not maintained as well as what 23 actually is. And again, for car traffic, we're already moving cars over as it is. So athletes will come out, stay on US 23, and go 23 all the way up to Route 98 before they exit and get off there. And with that, so that's the biggest change on the bike course is that. So it's because the test pavement used to have a lot of flat tires. There was a lot of seams, so some people went down. So right now we're going to stay on 23. The only other real big change on the bike course is our first aid station. Up on 98 close to 309. There's a Frontier office. So we'll actually go into that parking lot for the aid station to come back out. 98 doesn't have that much of a shoulder. So for the safety of our volunteers and our athletes, we'll go into the parking lot, hit the aid station, and then come back out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But sounds much, much safer.
Yeah.
It actually, to be honest with you, that sounds like the safest possible way to do any aid station.
Yeah,
I know you can't, but I mean, I think the biggest accidents happen, like, you got people flying through aid stations because they don't need it. You have people wobbling back and forth, ditching bottles, and you have people grabbing bottles, and you have people stopping. It's just a very congested traffic area, but so I can imagine that's got to actually make it immensely safer around there.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the one question a lot of people had was, with it being in the parking lot, well, if I don't want the aid station, can I just go straight and stay on 98? And just for fairness for everybody, everyone's got to go in the parking lot. But the nice thing is the parking lot's almost, it's kind of the drive-through part of the parking lot, but it's almost 2 lanes wide as it is. So if you don't need it, you can stay as far to the left, and you don't have to worry about oncoming car traffic.
Gotcha.
As you would if you were out on the main road. So mostly because 98's so busy. The other 2 aid stations are on very quiet roads. So it's not as much of an issue there, but with 98 being a busier road, that one was, thankfully, again, our police chief spotted that opportunity for us, so made that happen.
That's awesome. And that looks like it's around what, like mile 13, 14?
Yeah, it's right in that area. I think it's 14-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't imagine, when you say busy, I wouldn't imagine these roads probably get that busy until 8 or 9 o'clock, right?
Yeah, and it's 8 or 9. It's probably even closer to 9 to 10.
They know what they're getting into, probably.
Yeah, and now that we have, almost an hour less on the swim time as well, we'll be clear of those roads even earlier now as well.
And I want to ask, because it's a Sunday race, right? So
yep.
I wanted to ask just a general question. It seems like most races are on Sunday. Is that just way more easier logistically than dealing with a Saturday? I mean, as far as the city goes.
It tends to, because, again, it's a lot less traffic Saturdays in cities, foot traffic, car traffic, all that. Everyone's kind of out doing their stuff on Saturday. I think Sundays, just logistically, like you said, are just a little bit easier.
Yeah. Totally agree with that. What about, so you get past, so that's really good information on that aid station. So let's say you're doing the bike course, your kin is racing on Sunday. Mm-hmm. What are your top 2 takeaways if you're advising somebody or yourself how to attack this 56-mile bike course?
It's gonna be a lot of pedaling. Again, being from Central New York, it's flat in comparison. Syracuse 70.3, which I just had here about a month ago, we had 3,200 feet of climbing. This Ohio race has 600 feet. And most of that comes in the last 10 miles because you kind of come back along the river. So it's very flat. And I always joke that because it's so thin that you can almost see from one side of the course over to the other. If the corn wasn't so tall, you probably could. But it's just, I would say it's, as you said, just kind of get in your groove through 23 and 98. And once you hit, 309 and 42 coming back, you can pretty much put the hammer down from that point. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of pedaling. That's southbound. You'll tend to probably have a little bit of a headwind, if anything, and the tailwind going out on the northbound side on the first, 20 so. But you could easily have an age grouper who's going to average 25, 26 miles an hour.
Jeez, please.
That's sweet. Yeah, I was going to ask about a wind trend, and it sounds like, is it typically not that windy up there, or does it?
It's not. It hasn't been on race day. We did have 2016, we did have a tornado go through transition, but...
that's no biggie.
Yeah, that helped calm things down.
I'm sure that calmed you down your first one.
Yeah, it's
they can't be any worse than this. So
yeah,
looks like there's
that was a good one.
So there's 3 total aid stations.
Yep.
Looks like 14, 33-ish and 42, maybe 41, yeah. 42. Yeah. Any major requests that makes life easier on the athletes and the volunteers that we have at these aid stations that might help ease athlete minds, but most importantly keep the athletes safer? That things to know about the aid stations and when to toss bottles and last time to get water or any kind of fuel.
Yeah. So all our aid stations are going to be set up the same as they are for all Ironman events. So it's they're mirrored. So it's basically, when you come up to an aid station, you'll have probably about 100, 200 yards before where you can discard any of your bottles that you need. And then when you hit the aid station, you'll have water, Gatorade, food, which it contains Cliff Bar, Cliff Shots, and I think some other bananas and that kind of stuff, and then Gatorade and water again. So that's water, Gatorade, food, Gatorade, water.
Got it.
And then from that, you'll have about another 100 to 200 yards to discard your bottle after that. So with Ironman races, you get a penalty for blatant littering. So if you throw your gel packet or you throw your water anywhere between the aid stations, not in that discard zone, you can actually get a penalty for it. But as long as you're discarding your trash in those designated zones, everything's okay.
Got it.
So that's the setup for all of our aid stations. And we'll have signs that say, start of aid station or start of discard zone, and then last chance trash, and then end of aid station.
Very cool. And now, do you guys sweep the course the night before, like a lot of races do? Is that protocol, like to make sure it's not in mark potholes, or is that basically individual by who's actually putting on the race?
No, so that's again kind of our job. Our bike course team will come in on Tuesday or Wednesday, and they will start putting down tape arrows and starting to identify problem areas on Wednesday, Thursday. Friday is usually pothole repair day. So they'll go through with cold patch and start repairing any of the big potholes and start sweeping. Saturday is another sweep. We go through, again, we finish any potholes that we might have missed, sweeping a lot of the turns, using leaf blowers to clean out any of the debris, any of the roadkill that might have come up. And then this race specifically, our team usually gets started about 2:30, 3 a.m., and they'll have backpack blowers and shovels and brooms and all their signs. So then it'll be just one more go through anything that came up on Saturday that they missed, or people have kicked up from their gravel driveways, that kind of stuff. We can clean up one more time before the race. And then our bike course team, we come back through. Ideally, they finish just before the cyclists go out. And then we have a 30, a 15, and a 10-minute vehicle, because we have 3 guys on course. The 30-minute vehicle will go out, again, make sure there's no car accidents, make sure that there's no debris, make sure that all the signs are still there. Our 15-minute vehicle, and this is 15 minutes before the first athlete, 15-minute vehicle will go out, make sure that the police are in place, make sure everything is, volunteers are showing up, all those kinds of things. And then the 10-minute is really just the last ditch, again, make sure that there's no car accidents, make sure that there's no upset residents, make sure that we haven't had any tacks thrown across the road as we've had in some places, or there's a hay wagon parked in the road, kind of stuff. Yes, and that's our race day.
Wow. You can file that under A, impressive, but B, things that I did not know occurred. Yeah. That is, I have an entirely whole new appreciation for, good gracious, what you guys go through, especially just on the bike course, to make sure that these roads are safe and clean, and as not every road is going to be perfect. It's just not possible. But to really go out and make that kind of an effort, and I do, and I'm sure that I will sincerely hope that anybody doing this race or listening or asking about the bike course listens to this podcast. And what Ken just said about, that is a ton of time that they put into making sure the course is safe and fast, and giving you the best opportunity to have a clean uninterrupted race, minus the air horns.
Right.
That was outstanding.
That was perfect time. That is awesome. Kudos to you guys, and that is I did not know that, which is awesome.
What time do you get up on race day, or you just stay up?
Or do you go to bed?
Well, it's pretty restless. I'm usually up. I'm on site by 4, so usually I'm up around 3. It's not abnormal for me to be pulling into the park as our bike course is just starting to head out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you check the weather more than an athlete checks the weather?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right, so I figured as much. I figured, especially from like your post-traumatic tornado disorder you may have from like 2016. That's like you're probably on it all the time to make sure that is that. I mean, and yeah, we'll finish up like the race thing. But I always like think like when you see races that have these like adverse race conditions that pop out of nowhere, like super hot races that are able like they come out of nowhere that. Races like we did Chattanooga 70.3 in May, and it was unseasonably hot, and I couldn't commend them more for like being totally prepared with ices and sponge and water and stuff like that when you had no idea if they were even going to need it. Like how many backup plans for your backup plan do you have in terms of rain, wind, crazy heat, like all these conditions that you really are only going to need refreshments and fill aid stations for just one?
The biggest thing for us is, and this is kind of our just company standard, is just making sure we have plans and written down. Making sure that like our medical and operation, our kind of emergency action plan has essentially as many different variables in it, that we can account for. That being said, there's been times I've been working a bike course and you're just going to gas stations to buy ice because it's just so unseasonably hot, and you're just running around going to find any ice that you can if you can't get resupplied. There's times where again it's unseasonably hot and one of the bike aid station trucks has half a pallet of water left and they're starting to run low on the run course. You steal that half a pallet and you drive it out on the run course, and that's how you're resupplying that kind of stuff. So it's having your plans in writing, but it's also being flexible and knowing here's what I can do or here's what I can kind of make happen, and just identifying. And on the flip side, like you said, with the rain and thunderstorms and all that, identifying shelter locations, identifying ways to transport athletes back to safety, and those kinds of things for sure.
So no stress.
No, yeah,
right. Okay,
not.
It seems very chill. Very, very. It sounds like you work triage, basically like a 12-hour triathlon ER triage shift of just making sure it all works.
And that's the biggest piece. And one of the huge pieces, which is I think is genius for the Ironman perspective, is almost everyone you see is a race director on site. Our bike course, or our swim course, he's the swim course director for all of them. So he knows swim courses from all over the country. Our run course director for this, she's the race director for Super Seal out in California. Our operations manager, Frank Lowry, was the owner of, the Las Vegas 70.3 that we had for years and that World Championships. And everyone that is kind of in the leadership role per position has either done, 20 events in a year, or has been a race director and has been a higher up, in the way that they don't all have to come to you with small questions that they can pretty much answer or figure it out themselves, which is extremely helpful and a huge part of our staff that can be taken for granted pretty easily.
So you guys are like the Golden State Warriors of race directing.
Trying to be. Yeah, we're not the Cavs where we rely on one person.
Love it. So we get off the bike and you guys have basically swept every centimeter of it. And do I read this correct? Do you hop off the bike inside the stadium?
No. So you hop up on the sidewalk. and it's down and into transition. So it's probably from there. It's probably about 200 feet before you're into 100 feet before you're into the stadium, and then you run across the track, and then you're out on the turf field, and you rack your bike there. And the one question I know comes up a lot, because we have actually quite a few relay teams, is relay teams at the swim will have a little pen, what we call a pen. So a little boxed out area, so where the biker will meet the swimmer, and then the biker will go into transition.
Got it.
Because the stadium doesn't allow for that, the runners will actually just stand at the bike rack waiting for their athlete to come. But otherwise, yeah, you just come in, put your bike in transition. The one thing we ask is you don't open any food on the turf. You can have your bars and your gels and your flasks and all those kinds of things. But we ask that you don't open a gel and then throw the gel wrapper on the turf, because then that's a whole other mess to try to deal with the turf. So we're trying to keep it as clean as possible. Mm-hmm. But then you'll exit the far kind of corner, so it's obviously a fair transition across. So you got to kind of go diagonal out, and then it's a little tight with two-way traffic, but it's not too terrible. You'll exit Selby on the kind of the north side of the stadium outbound before you get onto the run.
Gotcha.
Are
these marked?
Sorry to interrupt, but the run gear bags. So again, all your stuff is going to be in the run gear bag. Your shoes, your visor, your hat, your sunglasses, your race number, all those things will be in your run bag. But because we're not transporting your run bag, you don't have to put your bike shoes, your helmet, those kinds of things back into that bag.
Gotcha.
So that's a big piece. So unlike T1, where all your swim stuff has to go into the bike gear bag, your bike stuff does not have to go into your run gear bag.
Just spew it all over the ground.
Just make it a yard sale.
Yeah, make it a yard sale. Now, are the racks, when you come in to teach you, are they racked with your number?
Yep.
Just like they are in T1? Okay.
Yep.
That's good to know. And so your run gear bag will just be sitting there where you placed it the day before or just the morning of in front of your number.
Yep. Yeah, and that's another reason to drop off your bag on Saturday, so that way you know where you're going on Sunday when you come back in. Otherwise, you're running around lost on Sunday trying to find where your bike goes. I've done that before.
What are there good? I'm sure there is inside the stadium. There are good landmarks to remember what rack you are, or anything that athletes could kind of take note of to remember where.
The yard lines.
Come on race day. Are they painted?
They are, because it's artificial turf, so they are painted, which makes it nice because we give basically I think it's almost 5 yards between racks compared to our normal 10, 12 feet. So it's yard lines. You can use the finish line, which we have kind of scaffolding and tents there. There's quite a few things within, and then even at the end of each row, we have what we call end row signs. So that will be it'll say, numbers 1 through 150, and then the next one will be 151 to 250, and so that way at least you're down that row.
Got it. So is the finish line just smack dab in the middle of transition?
No, it's over on the track. So you'll be on the transition, and then the finish line's on the track.
Very cool.
So
we go through. We get our transition. We're at the 45-yard line.
Yep.
And we head out on the run. What do we need to know about the run course?
So out on the run, my little bit of a humble brag, 2016 voted the 3rd best run course in the world based on athlete feedback.
Yeah, I read that. I was super impressed. People like the run. That's all we need to know.
It's a 2-loop lollipop shape. So you go outbound for about, what is that, 2 miles, and then you got about a 4-mile loop, give or take, that you'll do twice, and then you'll bring that 2 miles back. You have an aid station right about 3/4. Your first aid station is about 3/4 of a mile in, and then it's about every mile from there on out. So I think it's 5 aid stations, maybe 6 aid stations per lap. 6 aid stations per lap.
So plenty.
And again, that'll be water, Gatorade, food, Gatorade, water. And the food there is, again, Cliff Bars, Cliff Shots, bananas, pretzels, orange slices. I don't know if we're doing cookies this year, that kind of stuff.
You're not even racing.
I know.
Trust me, I like the leftover cookies.
Yeah, he always gives me like a Ziploc bag when I race, and he doesn't to like grab as many cookies as I can, so when I finish, he can eat them. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's the reason I think it's again, perspective-wise, because one of the legs you're coming back in, it's along the river. It's along the Olentangy River. It's considered a pretty hilly course for the area, but again, relatively speaking, for those who have done Syracuse or done much of anything, some of the northeast races or the northwest races, it's pretty flat. But it's a good run course. It's, like I said, 2 loops. You got families who will come out. Again, our run course director, she's been here 3 years. She does run courses all over the country. And that first year, she's like, I've never seen so many neighbors just come out and sit and cheer people on.
Yes.
So that's I think the big piece of it. Again, pretty quiet roads. We have a full lane, so unlike the bike course where you're going to be kind of blending in with traffic, we have a full dedicated car lane for the run course, so that it's shut down, so you won't have to deal with cars on the run course.
Man, yeah. So is that, do you think, just the spectators and the route is what made it such a popular run course among athletes? I
do, and I hope some of it has to do with the finish line. Finishing on the track, because again, that's part of the run course, right? So I hope that helps. And even in that hilly section, it's pretty shaded. There's a few sections where you're pretty much out in open horse fields, but that hilly section, it's pretty well shaded along the river. But I think it was spectator support, neighbors. I think that was really a big piece of it.
That's awesome. Will there be any sponges or ice at the aid stations?
Yeah. Yep. We're trying to move away from sponges just because of the environmental impact. But depending on the heat, we'll probably put them out at a few of the aid stations, and then of course ice. Ice on what we call on demand. So it's not like we're just handing out chips of ice, but if you ask for it, kind of thing.
Good to know.
Sweet. That sounds beautiful.
Mike, are you sold? I can feel you hovering over the registration button as we speak.
Hey, you never know, man. I assume it's still open, right?
Yep. Yeah, registration will be open until Sunday before the race, and then if we do have any spots left, you can walk up on Friday and Saturday if registered. But again, that's if we're not sold out by the Sunday.
So, and how do you set? I have one quick question about that. Do different cities? How do you set limits on numbers of participants? Is that city-based, course? Probably all of the above, right?
It's a little bit of both. The primary of this one is course-based. Bike course. Between, if I was basing it purely just on transition, we could take, a lot like Augusta and take 3,500. But bike course, just because it's some of the roads are a little bit narrower, I think 2,500 is a pretty safe number to keep all our athletes safe without being too congested. Yeah.
So, last question about the race. If there's anything you could tell an athlete, whether it's a first-timer or returning athlete to this race, or I guess any other race, to alleviate stress and make their overall experience a good one, what's like your number one tip of advice you would give them?
Read the athlete guide, go to the athlete meetings. Because what will make your life easier, again, as we kind of talked about when we first started, is following the way we're moving people. As our announcer will tell you in the athlete meetings, he always starts, this race is about bags and buses. Because those are the two biggest questions. If you're going to take the shuttle, that'll make your life a lot easier. Knowing the route, knowing their times and their pickup locations, and then understanding how the bags are working, how they're driving them back and forth, and all those kinds of things. But those are what's going to make your life easier, for sure, to make your life easier and more enjoyable. And then the other part of it is just enjoy the experience. Thank a volunteer. and enjoy the fact that you're able to get out there and do a 70.3.
Love it. You got anything else, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious, man. You live in Syracuse, and I don't even know if you can talk about it or anything, but is there any feelings you have about Syracuse discontinuing?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a little heartbroken. Again, I've been with it since year one. But it's one of those things where it just participation wasn't there, and with the rising cost of all things, you know, just as everything in the world, you know, the cost increases to do business was going up. It just wasn't making the best sense. So, yeah, I'm definitely hurt. It's something I poured my life into, but it's, you know, now it's with Ohio, it's something else where I can just continue to help my passion of putting on a race. It's and do the best thing that I can for people. It's I'm excited to be with Ohio still. It's always great. Because it's one of those things where, you know, it sounds super cheesy, but on that start line, you've changed somebody's life by putting on the race. Someone that's either lost 200 pounds or overcome cancer or is doing it to raise money for their family members who's passed away or anything like that. So to be able to continue to do my job and still be able to host Ohio is huge for me. But yeah, it's definitely a part where I'm pretty sad that Syracuse will no longer be.
Yeah. Do you see Ohio continuing on for a while?
I do. With registration the way it's going, again, you know, I kind of warned our city team last year of a sophomore slump, and our sophomore slump went from 2,500 registered to 2,300, and now we're back to 25. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So we are currently working on a city contract for an extension, and those talks are happening above my pay grade, but right. But that way at least I know I have job security for a little bit, and but yeah, it's again with the city being so supportive, I know that we are working on that for another term for sure.
Excellent, man.
Well, again, like we really, really appreciate you taking the time. I know that it's super busy and you got a lot of stuff going on, especially here in the next few weeks. So, and I hope that if you see Ken around and you're listening to this podcast and you found it useful, please go up and shake his hand and give him a big thank you, because as you can tell, there a lot of stuff goes on to putting on these races, and it obviously I took it from the athletes that I know that have raced this. They've had nothing but good things to say about it, but then after talking to you, I totally get, not even having stepped foot there, why this race is so well liked and so well put on. You sound like you do an awesome job, and I look forward to meeting you when we get up there in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
You got it.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it.
Appreciate your time, Ken.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
Bye.